all we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
On Chief, what they say they heard I was up here, so they had to open the stove back up for the kids, yo. You know what I'm saying? I can't be out here without the stove being open. I need somewhere to duck and hide for cover. Pipe it up. I slid, so they pop the stove back open for the kids.
Picked up bag.
I got proof right here.
She just picked up.
I got nothing.
Trash bag. So we
Please don't touch me.
hold on.
Don't touch me, please.
The girl came over,
Not touch me.
gave us a bag and gave us shit. Damn, man.
Give us your hand, buddy.
Put your hand behind your back. I can't breathe. 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 I can't breathe.
Once again, police beating up on people. Back up right here.
Back up and get on that.
960 lives taken by the police force in 2016. Over 5,000 fatalities from gun violence in 2017. These are some of the numbers behind the issues that plague our society today. With little progress being made to improve these situations in our society, a useful viewpoint can be to imagine what prominent leaders in U.S. history would attempt to do in such situations if they were still around. That's what we're going to be doing today. As in 3 interviews, I will be addressing King's ideologies and thoughts on sparking social change and asking my interviewees what they think on the topics and what King would say if he were still around today. My first interview was with Chris Quigley, a colleague of mine who was a double major in history and theology. I wanted to know his thoughts on these issues, as he has a well-versed background in social justice movements and efficient methods of provoking change, as well as King's ideologies. Alright, so I'm here with Chris Quigley. He's a double major in theology and history, so he's a good friend of mine. He's going to have a lot of insight on the topics. He's going to have a lot of educated opinions due to his prior knowledge. So basically, I'll just keep
to topics such as police brutality and gun violence today, which are two pretty hot topics, and we're just going to talk about how King would view how to solve these issues today. And that's pretty much going to base what we're going to do. You can put in your personal input, and then we can go on King's ideas. So with that, I'll get us started. I'll give you the first quote. So let me just pull it up right here. It's from the excerpt from his autobiography. It's from the chapter "The Violence of Desperate Men." The context is this was during his planning of the Montgomery bus boycott, which was obviously one of his biggest movements that he influenced. So the quote is, "One night at a mass meeting, I found myself saying, if one day you find me sprawled out dead, I do not want you to retaliate with a single act of violence. I urge you to continue protesting with the same dignity and discipline you have shown so far." A strange silence came over the audience. So with this, I'm going to kind of pose the question that, we'll just kind of relate this to, more hot topics we see a lot of the times. If you see police brutality against African Americans, or you see gun violence, because that it's the most common response is violence, to act out with that same violence. So do you think that King's ideology of nonviolence in any situation is always justified?
Definitely, because the method that Luther had is, from the quote, is to remain humble, because remaining humble and not acting out by means of violence will resolve and get you further through the issue and ultimately resolve the issue, where everyone who is segregated can become as one.
So how do you think, if you have, we've had situations where, police officers have been murdered just recently, you had, I forget the name of the fellow, but it was I Can't Breathe, the police brutality. Yes. So how do you think King would react to gun violence and police brutality today? And most importantly, what do you think he would say in order for us to kind of start healing the wounds? Because there is a very big divide between the community and the police force today. So what do you think he would say?
I definitely feel like his heart would definitely be very hurt, because you see a person like Luther, where he was frowned upon, sadly, by the community just because of his skin color, but acting out with violence is not going to solve anything, and that's exactly what he said in the quote you just said. So I feel like he would be highly against police brutality and all of these recent occurrences. So I think what Luther would do is continue what he'd be doing in a uniform aspect to inform and educate the community that violence is not the answer.
I think one of the biggest things King always said, that, he said hate breeds hate.
Exactly.
Violence is only going to promote more violence, and nothing will ever get solved. That's the same retaliation. So we move on. With that, we're going to move on to the second quote that I have to be addressed. This is from the chapter on Malcolm X. You're very educated on the background of, obviously, of theology and religion, or just overall U.S. history. Obviously, Malcolm X was a prominent leader in the African American civil rights movement. He obviously took the exact opposite. He said his motto was "by any means necessary." So he felt that if violence was really the way that they had to act, then that was justified. And obviously, King opposed this. So this is another excerpt from his autobiography, and the quote goes, "I know that I have often wished that he would talk less of violence, because violence is not going to solve our problem. And in his litany of articulating the despair of the Negro without offering any positive, creative alternative, I feel that Malcolm has done himself and our people a great disservice. Fiery, demagogic oratory in the black ghettos, urging Negroes to arm themselves and prepare to engage in violence, as he has done, can reap nothing but grief." So basically what he's addressing is, Malcolm X promoted that if gun violence is really what needs to happen in order to promote change, then, so be it. And obviously King goes the opposite way about this, but the question I want to pose to you is, why do you think that people feel the need to resort to gun violence, and why do you think that it's that innate, not innate, but that first reaction? Why do you think that is how it is?
I definitely feel like the world today is guided and not as educated as people like Dr. King was. So, you know.
Yeah, so let's pose that question one more time. Why do you feel people feel the need to resort to gun violence as an act of retaliation?
Definitely because I feel like people are not as educated as people like Dr. King. Dr. King saw the idea, which can be found in the Bible, treat others as you would want to be treated, and people like Malcolm X and many people in today's society feel like do anything to get anything. You know, that's, if you're gonna kill people, then going by that whole notion of treat others as you'd want to be treated. If you're gonna treat others by killing them, then other people are gonna kill you. So there's nothing going to be accomplished.
Right. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And then just question I'll pose more specifically to you, just with your background in theology and history. Obviously, you know, King followed a very strict nonviolence ideology, and also promoted mysticism, which kind of relates the Bible to any issues that you face that can, you know, basically saying that anything you face can be related in the Bible and can give you guidance. So, the question I'll pose is, in situations that King faced and ones that Black Americans still face today, whether it be social injustice, you know, King was thrown in prison, or any situation of those sorts, is it an efficient method to relate issues to the Bible, you know, in any way, and even more specifically, is it valid to relate them to Jesus' trials and tribulations?
Yes, without a doubt. The world comes in circles. Everything has a sort of a relapse, and if you look in the Bible or biblical times, you know, you have the Jewish people exiled in Egypt, but Moses led them out of captivity. So I feel like this is very relatable because, in the sense, people such as African Americans are in that exile, and somebody, whether it be soon, in the near future, or far-fetched, there will be that person, whether it be a higher being or just someone like Moses who was called upon by God to lead them into that return out of the exile.
The second interview I conducted was with a fellow classmate of mine, Ryan Conklin. With both he and I receiving the same knowledge throughout the semester on King, I was interested to see what another student with the same education on the topic as I would say. Alright, so I'm here with Ryan Conklin, who's a fellow classmate of mine. He's very educated on the topic, just for the fact that you know, he's been studying this with me all year. We've been going over the same topics, so I think his opinion will be extremely insightful, for the fact that it gives this project a different perspective from someone with the same educational background as I am. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it. And I'm going to start off with a quote from King's autobiography. And it was his first sermon at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. So we'll start here. So I'll read the quote to you. At a time when the flame of war might arise at any time to redden the skies of our dark and dreary world, at a time when men know all too well that without the proper guidance the whole of civilization can be plunged across the abyss of destruction, at a time when men are experiencing in all realms of life disruption and conflict, self-destruction, and meaning, despair, and anxiety. So I'll end that there. So I'll just kick it off. Do you think this quote from King represents a situation that we face with both police brutality and gun violence today? You know, we've seen issues such as, you know, in Dallas, in Texas, there were police officers murdered in cold blood, and then, you know, we've had the I forget the actual citizen's name at the time, but he was I remember the I Can't Breathe all over social media. You saw the Eric Garner, I believe, yeah. You know, he was obviously suffocated by a police officer. So, do you think the situation where, you know, King talks about, you know, despair and dark time, do you think that this quote can relate to the situation we face with police brutality and gun violence?
I think so, in a way, yes.
Okay. So this next quote, I'm going to keep a little more, not even a quote, just the next question I'm going to keep a little more open-ended. Why do you think that people immediately feel the need to resort to gun violence off the bat? You know, it's a big problem today. You know, we have a lot of just unnecessary first violence. So why do you think it's the first response?
I feel many people feel the need to have a way of getting their point across, and there is no more effective way to get a point across than by threatening and using violence. As unfortunate as that is, it's just what people resort to because it's the first thing that comes on their minds, and if you think about it, it can be the easiest way because it's just so quick to get to. Nothing has to be organized. You just pull out the gun.
Right. So it's almost like an easier, more just
exactly
intuitive action. I agree with that. So, last question. I'm going to kind of pose a situation in class. You know, we've always talked about how King's biggest ideology is nonviolence, and mysticism, and obviously theories like this. So, in class, we watched the Boondocks episode, in which I found the most powerful aspect of that episode was when, obviously King's reincarnated, or he was in a coma, and he comes back after 9/11, and after the terrorist attack, he preaches nonviolence, and everyone laughs at him because, he still felt that we shouldn't retaliate. So I'm going to kind of make that into a more open-ended question. Do you feel that nonviolence is always the answer, or do you feel that often that there is justified violence in terms of retaliation?
I believe nonviolence is effective on domestic grounds with most issues. I believe nonviolence is the most effective way, although it takes a long time. However, I do strongly believe in justified violence. As unfortunate as that time was, you cannot resolve a foreign issue with nonviolence. Almost, you can't peacefully protest another country that just crashed a plane into a major building in one of the largest cities on earth.
So you do agree that there is times that violence is justified. So
there is times that violence.
So you believe that nonviolence is not always the answer. Sometimes that there is a different
answer.
Not
than
always
the answer, but it should be the answer. Most of the time. All the time. So, I believe all the time inside the country.
Okay.
Issues within the country itself, not outside.
My third and final interview was with my fraternity brother, Nasir Rashad, who is an African American. With King's work having such a large impact on all of the black community's lives, I wanted to see what his opinions would be like from the perspective of someone who was affected by King's work firsthand, and to see his opinion on current issues today.
Alright, so I'm here today with my fraternity brother, Nas.
Nice to see you.
Yep, good to see you, man. We're in the same fraternity. He's obviously African American, so I wanted to get a different perspective on these kind of issues, since the African American community seems like it's targeted on hot topics such as gun violence and police brutality. Yeah, so with that, we're going to get it started. Basically how it's going to work, I'm just going to read you a quote or two, or just kind of explain King's ideologies, and see what you would think about how they'd either work today or what he meant by it. So I will start off with the first quote. So on his strategy of nonviolence, which is what he advocated, there was one night in his sermon that he said, "One night at a mass meeting, I found myself saying, 'If one day you find me sprawled out dead, I do not want you to retaliate with a single act of violence. I urge you to continue protesting with the same dignity and discipline you have shown so far.' A strange silence came over the audience." So in terms of today, with there's obviously a lot of police brutality. We have the Eric Gardner situation where it was I can't breathe. He was obviously suffocated, or any gun violence issues. Do you find that nonviolence is always the answer when it comes to provoking social justice?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think not doing violence. I feel like violence isn't the answer for problems. I think if you know something's right and you know something's being done wrong, it'll work out itself. It would just make things a lot worse if you provoke violence, because then you end up being the problem also, and you end up just elevating the problem. And if something's been doing wrong, then you say it's wrong, and then people learn from that, and that's how you move on. That's how I feel about it.
Absolutely.
Just make sure your word goes out, and it's not just it's not just words, like
Yeah, of course. So going off of that same quote, how do you think King, just based on this quote, or just he believed in obviously nonviolence, and he's very big on mysticism, which was a concept of you can pretty much relate all your issues to life through the Bible, so you can relate Jesus' trials and tribulations. But how do you think King, if he were still around today, how do you think he would react to the issues of gun violence and police brutality that we have today? What do you think he would say, or what do you think he would suggest?
He definitely would not be happy with some of the responses that people have done. The riots and all that's definitely not what he wanted to happen, because obviously that causes more problems, like I said before. But I think he would try to make sure that everyone speaks out like he did before, and make sure his word gets out again, and make sure everyone just understands that no one saw what happened, so you can't really base things off things that you don't know are true. Also, but just spreading the word of equality, and just making sure like there's no reason for people to fight each other for there's no reason for that. We're all equal. And I think that's what he would say. He would say we're all equal, and we shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be, caring for each other and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely, strengthening the community. So, the last thing that I want to address with you is obviously King grew up in a time, or was around at a time where obviously the blacks were targeted in pretty much every negative light you could kind of almost imagine. So, just relating it to police brutality, there's been a lot of cases or a lot of instances where it has been police targeting African American males, or even any African American. So, do you feel as a Black American that you've ever been targeted because you're Black, or do you feel like you've been paid more attention to by the police force because of your race?
I've never been in a situation where I feel like I was targeted, but I feel like there's, like, for example, like if I'm speeding, I feel like there's a better chance of me getting pulled over than someone who isn't Black, or someone who's lighter skinned. I don't know if that's exactly true, but that's just the feeling I have after what's always happened. You can't change the way people think. Some people don't like them, and that's what you can try your best to get the word out and get them to understand that, but you really can't change some people. You really just can't change what they feel, like how they feel. So that's just how I feel. Like there's definitely I feel like there's a better chance, but also, like, my mom's a detective too.
Okay.
So, like, she's also Black. There's also situations where, like, there's a police officer that's Black, and that could be racist towards someone who's Black. Like, that happens too. And it just shouldn't happen, because we're all equal. There's no need for that. And I just feel like that's how I feel, and I just think we should just better ourselves from these mistakes.
Absolutely. All right, that's all I have for you. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you answering these questions for me.
Anytime.
The need for social change in America today is undeniable. Police brutality still remains a huge issue within the country, especially in regards to them targeting the African American community. The mass amount of gun violence tears apart communities and cities, plaguing our country with death. In order to solve these issues, we must turn to King's wise words and ideologies, so that we as a people may work harder on the path to total social justice.